Hi, everyone. My name is Allison. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the executive director of the Gallatin County Democrats. I'm really excited to have two candidates join us tonight for Candidates and Community. We have Sandy Erhardt, who's running for Clerk of District Court, and Zach Brown, who is running for Gallatin County Commission. So they're going to tell you a little bit about themselves first, and then we'll open it up to questions and just have a conversation with both of them about their office that they're running for and why they're running and why you should vote for them. So Sandy, if you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. Hi, thanks, Allison. Yes, I am Sandy Erhardt, and I'm running for the Clerk of District Court here in Gallatin County. And I thought I would just start by telling you guys again a little bit about the Clerk of District Court office and how we serve Gallatin County. So the Clerk of District Court is the backbone of Gallatin County's judicial system. We are responsible for maintaining all the current and historical records of the district court. And we do have records that date back to the 1860s, prior to Montana becoming a state. The district court has jurisdiction over many different case types, including felony criminal cases, juvenile cases, civil lawsuits, domestic relation matters. And we do maintain a case file for each and every case, and we also sit in and cover court hearings for every hearing that's held in front of a district court judge. So it's a pretty big job. The majority of our records are open to the public, and our records are searched daily by title companies, credit and investigative agencies, and the general public. So it's the clerk's responsibility to ensure that our records are accurate and up to date. The other thing the Clerk of District Court does is we serve as the jury commissioner for the county. So every May, the Secretary of State provides a list to us that it's pulled from, like, voter registration, Montana driver's licenses, and Montana ID cards, and it's provided to our office, which we maintain and store electronically. And then we pull from that list to provide potential jurors for the district court, the municipal court, and the justice court here in Gallatin County. The clerk of court also serves as the public administrator for Gallatin County. And what that means is that I, or the public administrator, could be appointed as a personal representative in a decedent's estate, or as a guardian or conservator for an incapacitated person when there's nobody else available, willing or able to serve. So that's kind of the main role of the Clerk of District Court. I've worked in the clerk's office since 2001, so just over 19 years. And during this time, there's been tremendous growth in the county, as we all know, and this has impacted our judicial system as well. When I started working in the clerk's office, we just had 2 district court judges. Since then, we've added a 3rd judge and a standing master, and the need for a 4th judge is imminent. Given the district court's caseload and the growth, a well-functioning district court is vital to justice in our community. My extensive experience has prepared me for the job and has given me firsthand knowledge of the specific challenges that our judicial system faces. I'm running because I want to utilize my experience to streamline processes, and as clerk, I will advocate for the modernization of Gallatin County's court system. And I think this is imperative in keeping up with the growth that we're seeing in our county, and to ensure efficiency and access to our court system. So my experience, my work ethic, my proven dedication has prepared me, and I feel like I'm the most capable candidate for this position, and I'm prepared and ready to hit the ground running to ensure that this busy office keeps running smoothly.
Awesome. It is a big job. I really, the more I learn about these countywide positions, the more I realize how big of a lift they are, and why they're so important. And I think, you saying like this is the, a functioning court system is about justice. I think that really resonates with me right now. So thank you, Sandy. Yeah. Thank you. All right, Zach, your turn. You have the floor.
All right. Well, yeah, my name's Zach Brown. I'm running for the seat that is up in 2020 on the Gallatin County Commission. I just turned 30, so I'm a young public servant. I've served 3 terms in the Montana legislature. Before that, I grew up my entire life in Bozeman, went through the Bozeman public school system, went to the University of Montana, spent 1 year out of state after college, and then came back, and since have been a nonprofit professional and a member of the Montana legislature here in Bozeman over the last 6 years. So my policy expertise in the legislature and in my day jobs with a plural S there has mostly been related to natural resource policy. I'm currently chairing the Water Policy Committee, and I've done a lot of work around wildlife management and water policy and other things along those lines. I also have carved out a strange niche of late doing rural community organizing work. So that was part of what I did when I worked for One Montana, and what I'm spending a lot of time thinking about in the last 2 months, doing contract work for the Montana Nonprofit Association. So despite the fact that in Montana, Bozeman is very much urban, and I am from an urban community and an urban background, I've spent a lot of time in small town Montana working with farmers and ranchers and trying to solve problems across that rural-urban divide. In the legislature, I very much carved out a niche as a natural resource policy wonk, as well as somebody who is eager to find common ground with folks on the other side of the aisle. So I've been in the minority as a Democrat for 6 years or 3 terms, but have passed 21 bills over those 3 sessions. And that's largely due to my focus on building relationships across the aisle, speaking to Republicans, and finding common ground values amongst folks that may have grown up in a different context and have a different value set than I have. But I love building relationships. I love solving problems. And that has, in a very odd roundabout way, led me to this journey to want to run for the county commission. So in my view, the opportunity that is in front of us with the Gallatin County Commission, for one thing, as Democrats, if we look at it simply through a partisan lens, which is oversimplifying a complicated position, but if we just look at it through that lens, if I win in November, it will be the first time we'll have a Democratic majority on the commission since 1996. And over the course of the entirety of our having a county commission after our 1972 state constitution was created, there have probably been, I'd have to look at the numbers, but something along the lines of 6 or 8 years out of those nearly 50 years that we've had a Democratic majority. And so what does that mean in the context of policy and decision-making and organizational culture? To me, it means that largely we've had, well, many great people like Sandy and many others work for the county. It's an organization that employs over 500 people. And many great leaders from both sides of the aisle have served on the county commission over the last 50 years. I think the dominant culture over the course of time has been a fairly passive culture when you think about dealing with forward-thinking problems or forward-aiming problems like growth and land use policy, or how we deal with the criminal justice system moving forward and things like that. And I think as a young professional who's at the beginning of my career, relatively speaking, rather than at the end of my career, I'll bring a different level of energy and a different focus, future forward focus to the commission that will hopefully help us solve problems across the rural-urban divide. And I'll just end by saying that I'll be the first commissioner, if I'm elected, since 1996 who lived within the city of Bozeman, which is the county seat and the largest urban center in the county. And while I wouldn't advocate that county government should be run by Bozemanites, I would advocate for the fact that it's incredibly important to have the perspective of somebody who does live in an urban context on the county commission. As a young person who grew up here my whole life, I've seen a tremendous amount of change. And I've also had the perspective over the last 6 or 7 years of trying to get my feet under me professionally and economically in this town, and the cost of living pressures that come with that, and all of the economic challenges around trying to make a go of it when you don't inherit land or wealth. It's a real problem in this town and this community. So I'm excited to bring that perspective, and I think it'll be a breath of fresh air. And obviously I'm biased in that. And the last thing I'll say is, in the last year, I've had the opportunity to work for our community's poverty services agency, HRDC. And that has been sort of a cherry on top experience for my time in this community, thinking about the fact that, yes, Bozeman and Gallatin County are experiencing a tremendous period of growth and prosperity, but the growth and prosperity is not working for everyone. And there are many, many members, neighbors and families and folks in our community who are living in poverty and are not able to make it work in this community financially and otherwise. And I've had the wonderful opportunity to be in a service position, serving and working with those folks over the last year, working for HRDC. And I'm excited in all the challenging conversations that come with growth to bring that perspective to the table. And I don't think that perspective has necessarily been there from a commissioner over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And so I think we're at challenging but exciting times, and serving on county government seems like a really wonderful opportunity from my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. I just want to say, first off, thank you both for running for these seats. These are county-wide positions, so that means you need to get a lot of votes. And so these aren't tough races to win. And I just, for anyone, but definitely for Democrats right now. But thank you both for running. Thank you for your perspective. I would love to open this up to questions. So if you have a question, feel free to type it into the chat and I'll read it for you. Or you can raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question. I'll give it a couple seconds between, and then I'll fill in gaps if you don't have a question or haven't thought of one yet. But I'm sure that at least a couple of the people on here have a question at the tip of their tongue already. So Julia, do you have a question?
Yes, thanks. So I've been knocking on doors in the city, and it's fascinating that people in the city don't even know they get to vote for county officials. Like, that's how low the level of information is. And I just received a bunch of cards for Sandy. So we will hopefully include Sandy in our pitch now going forward. But I wanted to specifically ask Zach about, it seems like the big interest, like the really big interest item is growth and planning for the county, at the county level. And I myself don't actually know too much about in the weeds about that. Like, I give a sort of generality in my response, which is fine, I think, but I'm curious about, like, in the weeds, like, how does it work? What is the kind of input the county commission has in terms of how growth is happening in the county?
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. And I have a couple of preamble things before I get to that. First of all, thank you for everything you're doing in House District 65. Yeah, it's amazing. And you've given out a lot of my literature, and I owe you more. And you have Sandy's now. And so just anyway, that's so appreciated from our end. So know that, please. The other thing you said that I want to say is, or I want to respond to, is that many people in the city don't know they get to vote for county positions. That is a really interesting, that's a really interesting thought that actually I think leads to a larger conversation about the relationship between city and county voters and city and county government. Jane Jelinski, who's one of your neighbors, is my treasurer and was the last county commissioner to live within the city limits of Bozeman. And she told me when she first got on the commission, one of her Republican counterparts was actively advocating for a rule change so that city voters couldn't vote in countywide elections. And well, that is actually probably unconstitutional and pretty wild to think about. It's just sort of a naked expression of that cultural perspective on the divide between city-county government. This gentleman who advocated for that was fine taxing city residents for county services and was fine with county employees providing city services, but thought that county government should be for people outside of city limits. And so I think that's an extreme expression of that divide, but I would say it is telling of the way many people think about city and county government and city and county voting. To your question about growth and planning, Scott McFarland just told me on Monday, I asked him, I was meeting with him and I asked him how much time he thinks he spends a year and a half, 2 years into his tenure on the county commission on land use planning. And he thought it was close to 80%. And so it's worth saying that that's probably the largest part of the job, and especially in a county where we're experiencing such a tremendous amount of growth. My perspective, just in a nutshell, is to say that we have to do better than what we've been doing. I think the culture on the county commission has been largely to hide in our shell and allow engineers and developers to make most of the tough decisions about where growth happens and how it happens. The result of that for the rest of us is that a few people who have property rights interests and water rights interests and business interests make most of the strategic decisions about where growth happens and how it happens for the rest of us. And while this may be a radical thing to say in some circles, I think government, and especially local government, needs to be the arbiter of those conversations. We need to have more of a seat at the table through county government and be a facilitator for those conversations so that the public has more access to those conversations. And I might say the radical thought as well that there are probably a half dozen people in this county who are in the private sector who have made more influential decisions about land use planning than our commission has over the last 20 years. And I don't think that's right, because I don't think that's for a democratic way for a community to make decisions. One last thought is that I think a really fundamental MSU for many years and has thought a lot about land use planning is that land use planning decisions in Gallatin County have been made where city and county governments build transportation routes and make transportation planning decisions following developments. So in other words, somebody has property interest and rights and makes a subdivision, and then we build roads and streets and sewer lines and so forth towards that development. And his point was, shouldn't it be the other way around? That in fact, you can have an incredible influence on forward-thinking community development if you're doing transportation planning on the front end and saying, here's where we want the community to grow, here's how we want it to grow. And the fact that we haven't really been doing that type of planning and haven't been laying that infrastructure and roadmap for the last several decades means, again, that our democratic systems, our city and local government, our county government, have been in many ways punting those decisions to the private sector. And I'd like to at least tip the scales in the other direction as a part of my service if I'm elected.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Zach. So Sandy got a question in the chat, which she also answered in the chat, but I'm going to make her ask or answer the question also verbally. So the question is your position a vacancy? Who is your opponent and why are you the best pick?
Oh, I see. I wasn't sure. Okay. Yeah. So Jennifer Brandon, who is the current clerk of court, is retiring. And so yeah, she's leaving it open. And my opponent is a coworker. And I feel like just my experience and my dedication make me the best fit for the position. And I'm just ready to take it on.
absolutely. And you have, you are a supervisor, right? Or a manager in the
I am. Yeah, I'm currently the management supervisor in the clerk's office since 2016.
Mhm. So you, like in the the structure of the office, your position falls like second to the current clerk, or
Yeah. Yep. I'm just below Jennifer. Yep.
okay. Yeah. So you
Yeah,
have that experience and that responsibility right now.
I do. Yes.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. See,
Mhm.
got one question down for each of you. Who has another question? Feel free to unmute yourself. Dwayne, do you have a question?
Yeah, actually I do. Sandy, first of all, I think you did very well just now in your introduction, so I'm going to compliment you on it. I would encourage you to speak more strongly about your position and the fact that you are a supervisor now, and it's the next logical step for you to move forward. That's pretty impressive that you've been there for 4 or 5 years and you're ready to take on the top position. So I think you can emphasize that and be quite proud of it. And Zach, this is the first time I've ever heard you talk about what you do. And I'm really impressed. Just a couple minutes background. I first saw Boulder, Colorado when I was on my senior day sneak. And Boulder, Colorado, as I rised over the ridge and looked down into the Boulder Valley, looked exactly like Bozeman looks today. So let's see, that was a long time ago. But you can step forward 50 or so years, and that's where Gallatin Valley is going to be. So your forward thinking is exactly the right way to look at this, and you've got a good handle on what it takes. If you're not familiar with Boulder County, I would recommend that you go back and do some digging about how they handle it, because that whole Front Range has just turned into an urban ocean, if you will. And Boulder County has done a good job of isolating themselves for that. So they've retained, their individual culture, if you will, against the rest of the urban Front Range. And so that's what you have to look forward here, because we are in an explosive growth period. So with that as a background, and knowing that you do think forward, what would be your vision for what the Gallatin Valley would look like, say 20 or 30 years from now? I won't be here to see it, but you will.
Dwayne, thank you so much. And I love the Boulder comparison, partially because I don't love it, candidly. I think that Boulder is different from where Bozeman is in a couple of respects. The comparison happens a lot, so it's by no means am I reacting against what you said personally, just to say that I've thought about this a lot. I think two things that make Boulder different from Bozeman. One is proximity to a large urban center. So having Denver right next door has driven explosive growth in that area. And in many ways, as you say, the Front Range development activity is sort of an example for what we can hope not to do. There's a lot of uninteresting sort of monoculture development and housing development along that Front Range that goes on and on along interstates and paved highways, and there's brown houses in subdivisions as far as the eye can see. So I think maintaining community character is something we can do differently than the way they've done development on the Front Range. The other thing to say that I think we can learn from the Boulder example, and part of what I hope to contribute to in my candidacy and service, is that Boulder chose to culturally differentiate itself from all the surrounding communities in such a way that it just really put a wedge culturally between rural and urban, or the liberal center of Boulder and the outlying communities, so that other communities surrounding Boulder chose the opposite development policies, the opposite politics, and took all of the quote unquote political or economic refugees from Boulder and accepted them into their community and let them do kind of whatever they wanted with development practices. And I think that that type of divide scenario, where say in Bozeman we develop really strict protectionist development principles that create preference for people with means and wealth, and push people who can't afford to live in this community to the outside communities, is a long-term losing scenario for our valley. It would create a long-term wedge in our community where Bozeman is the blue donut hole in a sea of red. And maybe that's happening to some extent anyway, but I guess my potentially naive hope is that we can both maintain open space, we can maintain character first development that isn't just monocultured, gray houses and condos as far as the eye can see, and storage unit facilities and commercial developments and the type of sprawl that none of us like to look at or drive past. But that we can also create inclusive and affordable infill growth so that people can live in this community, and we have some diversity politically and economically and culturally. And I think that type of a mixed use, mixed culture, mixed income future for this community is what I hope for. I don't hope for a ultra blue, ultra liberal, wealthy infill scenario where then we push all the folks who are working class into outside communities, who then make very different decisions about land use and community development and so forth. I hope we can kind of do this together a little bit more. And so my candidacy, I hope, is a little bit more of a bridge to some folks that don't see themselves fitting into the economic future that is Bozeman's trajectory. And hopefully county government can be kind of that glue that brings the city of Manhattan and the city of Belgrade and the, you know, Big Sky and the Yellowstone Club and the city of Bozeman together to envision and work towards a future that is more inclusive of lots of political ideologies, lots of income levels, and lots of values and philosophies.
Yeah, I like that, Zach. Boulder did some things right, but the things that he's done wrong, you pointed out very well. So those are the kinds of things that I'm very comfortable that you're aware of as you work toward the future. So let's get you in office.
Absolutely, that's what we all want. Thanks for that question, Dwayne. That was a really good question. What other questions are there? Feel free to shout out, or I'll call on you. I'm not afraid to call out names. You can unmute yourself or type it in the chat. Elizabeth, do you have a question?
Hey, I have a question
Okay, go ahead, Noah.
for Zach. Yeah, you talked a little bit about how, you know, you're into natural resource policy. I'd be curious just to hear a little bit more detail about what your priorities would be at the county level on those issues.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. So I think for just starting from a water policy point of view, that's where I spend a lot of my time thinking about resource limits. A very unsustainable sort of trajectory that the county has been on for the last 30 or 40 years has been sprawl and development that's based on exempt wells and septic tanks. And so when we allow communities to pop up mining groundwater and putting their effluent back in the ground and back into the groundwater table, that worked, I think, to some extent when we had a lower population density in this county, but as we fill up, that's a really negative way for this community to deal with our water resources. And so I think that a priority of mine, I'll always be thinking about water quality, and I'll always be thinking about senior water rights and how we move forward with development and housing in a way that is respectful and compatible with clean water resources, and also with traditional agriculture activities, which are really important. The common ground between people that care about open space and smart growth planning and people that have been farming the land for 3 or 4 or 5 generations is really an important common ground to seek out and nurture, and that's a big part of my candidacy. Another thing that comes to mind, I know, Noah, you work for the Montana Wilderness Association, and I was proud to see that all 3 of our county commissioners supported the collaborative Gallatin Front proposal, just in the sense that I think, I know that has sparked some controversy, and I know that some on this call may have differing perspectives about different aspects of that plan, but I think it was a recognition from our county government that wilderness, trails, motorized use, mountain bikes, there is a future that you could envision. The details are messy, but at least there's a future you could envision where all those uses are compatible, and we can move the ball forward on conservation, such as wilderness designation. So that's something that I supported as a legislator and would continue to support as a county commissioner.
Thanks for that answer, Zach. Appreciate it. One other thought I have just on county issues, and I'm sure that you've considered this. But one thing I see, I live in West Bozeman, west of 19th, and I see a lot of developments popping up, and I believe there's requirements for a certain amount of parkland and trails. But one thing I'd like to see a more kind of a cohesive thought process around between the city and the county is, if we are going to have these great trail systems within communities, making sure that they can connect to other developments. That's something I think about, on my personal time a lot. And I think it's, an important thing to think about as we continue to grow. So just a question.
It's an awesome thought. And if I'm elected, I'll luckily inherit a lot of good work that's happening right now. I know GVLT and other partners are working with the city and the county to initiate a trails planning conversation, and we'll inherit a lot of that good work and get to hopefully pick it up and run with it if I'm elected. So I really appreciate that thought, and that, to me, trails planning and what you're thinking about connecting trails and communities and development is very similar to thinking about a larger picture transportation planning process. And I think both go hand in hand, and are really important and have been lacking arguably over the last 2 or 3 or 4 decades. We've seen some steam pick up here in the last year or 2, but I'm excited to continue that trend, I guess, if I'm elected.
Great, thank you. What other questions are there for Sandy or for Zach?
Another question for Zach. Do you have any thoughts on controversy surrounding the split between paying for, Oak Street that goes by the regional park system? Apparently that's still not been resolved, and I guess I fully don't understand the gives and takes for that one. Do you?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert on that question, Dwayne. It's a really important question. I think what I will say is that mistakes were made on both sides in that whole debacle, from the city's perspective as well as the county's perspective. There's mutual distrust. There's cultural issues in both organizations in terms of how they approach working with one another or not. And a big focus of my candidacy is rebuilding those bridges, rebuilding that trust, treating people at the city and within county government as a manager with kindness and respect, and just nurturing that culture of we need to be working together. Because as a taxpayer, when my city and county government are suing one another using taxpayer dollars, I'm losing, we are losing. And so that outcome feels unacceptable to me, regardless of the inside baseball of how we got there. And so we need to be better than that, is what I'll say. Until I'm a commissioner, I'm not sure I'll know too much of the nitty gritty, but it's a really important question.
Absolutely. All right, so there is another question for Zach. Sandy, I'll ask you one next, so get ready. But Zach, how do you propose to solve the Law and Justice Center issue? How do you view the Gallatin Sheriff's move to spend a lot of money on the new sheriff's outpost in the former shooting range?
Yeah, so luckily for everyone, you won't have to hear me talk very much longer because I have a endorsement interview with Ford, Montana at 6:45. So I have to bug out here pretty quickly anyway. But thank you, Elizabeth. And yeah, I think that my perspective on the Law and Justice Center issue from a high level is that we have to get it done regardless of how we get it done. The reality is that that facility is so out of date and out of code that if we were to experience a large scale earthquake in this community, county employees would most likely not survive, or some number of them would not. And it's a human safety issue. So first and foremost, as an executive, if I were elected of county government, it would be a priority to make sure the county employees, when they go to work every day, are safe. And that means getting a new project done and rethinking that whole project and re-engaging voters so that we can sell the project and get it funded and get it accomplished. I think that potentially the sheriff's department's, the office of the sheriff's decision to pursue that Four Corners facility might be a smart move, and it might also be another way we can re-engage voters and say, hey, we're getting creative here. I met with the undersheriff a few weeks ago, and he said that, in fact, from his perspective, in terms of just deploying resources and responding to calls from the sheriff's department's perspective, that Four Corners location is much more central in the county than if they were running out of the fairgrounds anyway. So the ship has sailed. There will be no joint city-county facility. I think that's unfortunate, but that's the past. And so I am very interested in this move towards Four Corners. And then we, regardless, have to redo the conversation with the voters around the Law and Justice Center. We need to return to the voters as county government and say, we heard you. You said no twice. What can we do better? How can we utilize this conversation that's happening around Black Lives Matter and criminal justice reform and say, how can we rethink some of the services that are being offered and redesign a facility that is more community facing and inclusive and focused on providing some of the services that de-escalate these conflicts that we're seeing pop up around the country? How can we provide more resources to mental health services and to rehabilitation services and addiction treatment services that give law enforcement the tools to de-escalate conflict rather than escalate conflict? And so we have to get it done. And we also have to rethink how we're going to approach that project in the future. And I'm excited to dig into it. I'm not shying away from it. Just because it's failed twice, we have to keep at it. That's a sacred responsibility. If you're at the top of an organization, you have to take care of the people that work for that organization. And in this case, that's county employees, and we got to get it done.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach. I know you've got to run, but thank you for being here. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you for answering the questions, being in the hot seat or the shared hot seat tonight. And just thank you for running. And I love some of the words that you use, some of the phrases like community character, that really stood out to me. when you were answering Dwayne's question earlier. I've been writing notes about what you're doing. So just thank you, and good luck with your interview. We know you're going to do great, but thank you for being here. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you all. And I'll just give a shout out to everyone who's on this call and the Gallatin Dems organization in general. This has been a really fun cycle to be a part of because the energy from our people is at its height. My first cycle was in 2014. And so to see it at this level where this level of passion and engagement is at the forefront and all the people that are pouring their heart and souls into this election, it gives me a lot of hope. So thanks for everyone's efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. You go Gallatin. Thank you so much, Zach. All right, Sandy, that means you're in the hot seat now for the last few minutes. Who has another question for Sandy? And I guess I maybe just kind of, since we're talking about the Law and Justice Center, you know, maybe sharing a little bit about your perspective on this, you know, because you work in the Law and Justice Center right now, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, it just kind of feels like we make do with what we have there, and it's definitely outdated, and many issues with, again, I think I mentioned it last time when I was on one of these, we're just running out of room for our files and the storage that we need. They recently had to build a separate storage facility just to house both our files and then some of the Sheriff's Department records. And we have a sign up in our vault where we do have a lot of our files, like where we can only have about, I think there's a maximum capacity of 6 people because of the, you know, the issues with the potential for, you know, an earthquake, or it's just not, it's not a safe building. It used to be a high school. It's been converted, and yeah, it needs to be.
You need some TLC.
It needs some TLC. Yeah.
You need a new building. You got to need a new building. So you talked about this kind of the last time, and I would love to, since we've got different people on the call this time around, like talking about what modernizing the Clerk of District Court's office looks like beyond a new building, a new Law and Justice Center, but like kind of maybe sharing what's happened because of the pandemic in your office, and then also like what you will implement and the things that you want to do to help modernize the system, you know, moving forward.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, COVID has definitely brought to light some things that, and we have made some changes. We recently started accepting credit cards, which is, it seems like a small change, but it's been huge for our office. And the other thing is the judges have allowed for us to accept email documents. It's not the same as e-filing, but we can at least accept filings by email, which is a very recent change. And that's been well received by both, you know, by attorneys, by the public. But what I would like to see is a true e-filing system, which would, you know, eliminate the need for a paper file. And so that would, you know, free up space. It would also save on costs because we wouldn't be using all that paper and resources, and it would also make things a lot more efficient. And I know the state of Montana is starting to implement that around the state. It's started a few years ago. So slowly but surely they are putting the e-filing system in place, as well as what's called Full Court Enterprise, which is a web-based case management system for the district courts and the justice courts around the state. So.
Awesome. So Dwayne has a question kind of along these lines. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you as the clerk have a platform to advocate for your office and its people to advance for a better, more, you know, an adequate facility? And if you do, how would you go about it? Like, how would you be the advocate?
Yeah, I think that we definitely have a role in that. And I did attend some of the meetings with Jennifer when they were trying to pass, the most recent time when they were trying to get voters to pass a new law and justice center. And she was definitely consulted a lot, and, you know, as far as the design and what would work best for our office and how it interacts with the judges' offices and the, so yeah, I definitely think that the clerk's office is consulted at least, and I think it's up to the clerk whether or not they choose to advocate or how they choose to get involved and advocate for the new Law and Justice Center. But I would definitely do what I could to promote that, and I think everybody realizes who works in the Law and Justice Center how important it is and how necessary it is for us to have a new facility.
Absolutely. I think, space is so important in the space that we operate in, and we, get to be in. Our, it does impact our productivity. It impacts, how we perceive ourselves as employees, as team members. And if you have a building that won't survive an earthquake, I don't know about you, but like, I don't think I'd feel very good about going to work every day because of that. And, recognizing that in your position, you would be able to be part of that conversation and advocate for something better for you and your team and the community as a whole would be really good. So,
right.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Elizabeth, do you have a question?
I do. So Sandy, what is the favorite part of your job? What makes you happy in the morning to get up and go to that job?
Over the years, I've just really enjoyed helping people, kind of navigate the legal system, especially those who don't have an attorney. I mean, we are at the face of the, the judicial system, and we're the ones that they see, and that we're able to guide and help them navigate things. And so yeah, just working with people and just it being very busy. I enjoy that too. I mean, I enjoy staying busy and working hard, and my coworkers make it great. We have a really good team. Yeah, so I'd say the people, both the public and the people that I work with, what I enjoy most about the job.
Because honestly, on the other side of that counter, it's pretty scary. So you want someone that's, that feels happy to help you, because it's like,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, the state too. I mean, there's definitely, there are more resources available now. We have the Self-Help Law Center in the building, which is amazing. So we work with them quite a bit. And there's the Gallatin Legal Clinic that I don't think they've been meeting recently, but I know Jennifer, as the clerk, was a big part of that too. And they actually have attorneys that sit in and help people once a month. But anyway, yeah, so the resources are getting there, and it's just great to see that available for people who can't afford an attorney. So yeah, it's
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Sandy? What is the thing that you need? What can we do to help your campaign? You are one of the candidates down towards the end of the ballot. Most people don't know what a clerk of district court does. What do you need?
So what I'm focusing on right now is just trying to get the word out still, and getting walk cards delivered. So I have somebody who's helping me with my campaign. She's been amazing. So we're just trying to organize that. And yeah, that's my main priority right now, is just getting the word out, getting those walk cards delivered in the next couple of weeks. before and while ballots are about to drop. And yeah, so I need volunteers to help with that. It's a big job. Yeah, I realized that after, yeah, seeing all the cards that we have to get delivered in the next few weeks. It'll take some manpower.
Yes, people power. It does,
Yeah.
like, you know, these
People power, yes.
these county-wide races. I think, you know, we had a really great sweep in 2018 where we swept the 4 county seats for Democrats, but that was, you know, not easy, and it takes a lot of work. And I know that you are doing everything you can right now to get your name out there. Would you put your email address in the chat so that anyone who wants to reach out to you, looks like we may have someone who can help you or who's interested, so that you two can get in touch. But I mean, it takes all of us working up and down the ballot to make sure that votes are cast. There's a lot of drop off at the top of the ticket. You know, people know who's running for president and Senate and governor and US House. But then, you know, it starts kind of fading. And I think, you know, the more that we can engage people at all levels, the better our whole county and community will be. I've been really thinking a lot about why I'm a Democrat and why I vote Democratic candidates. And this cycle has never been more evident that Democrats care about people and care about our community. And just keep telling people that, that we care. Vote for Montana, vote Democrat for Montana, and we'll do well by that. I do, Dwayne's asking if I've got literature, and I do have some of her stuff. So Dwayne, if you want to drop things, we can get you hooked up, no problem. And then Julia, it looks like you had a question.
Oh, I was just going to chime in and say that it was helpful to me, Sandy, to hear you talking, because like the term district court doesn't mean a lot to me, but I think I now understand this is the entire court system of, like, if you're going to court in Gallatin County, this is where you're going. And the way, excuse me?
It is one of the courts. I mean, there are other courts.
Okay.
So there's a district court, and then there's justice court, which is also a county court, but they have different types of cases. And then there's also municipal court. So
there are 3 different realms of courts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I didn't make notes of the courts, but generally speaking, just for people to understand that if you end up in the court system, you want a well-run, a system that's making itself accessible to you, that's helping you out as someone who is in this position of being in a legal proceeding.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
I mean, it's not just like criminal cases that we, you know, divorce cases, civil lawsuits, parenting plans. I mean, so there are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're without resources, this is a place that's actually going to help you through the process.
Yes, and I mean, of course, we can't give legal advice out of our office. We're not attorneys, but we can definitely, you know, provide guidance and direct them to resources that are available. And,
yeah, I was sort of just trying to chime into Allison's caring about people.
Yeah.
So thanks, yeah. I feel clearer about what I will say to people now.
Good, thank you so much.
And Julie is kicking butt right now, so if she's clear, you know that she's getting your name out there. So it is almost time. Sandy, do you have anything else you want to say or communicate with everyone?
No, just thank everybody for, you know, for being here. I appreciate it. And yeah, and thank you everybody who's willing to help get the word out and those walk cards out. And if you do need more, Allison, I do have plenty more. So let me know and I can bring more by the office.
All right,
for everybody. But yeah.
We still have a stack, but we'll keep handing them out and getting them out and spreading your word. And just thank you for being on here. You've now done this twice, and I think you're a natural at this point.
Yeah.
You're doing great, and keep up the good work. And to everyone listening and on here tonight, thank you for being here. There's a lot going on and a lot of noise, but I really appreciate you caring about our county and these county-wide races, because these are critical, both of them, one for justice and one for really just the growth of our county and planning and relationships across the county. So thank you all for being here. We have more of these coming. Next Tuesday is Chris Pope at 6 p.m. And then on October 7th, we also have Melissa Romano. And who knows, we may throw in a couple in between. So keep following us on our website or social media, and we'll see you all soon. Have a good evening.